I worked as a CNA at a nursing home in rural Pennsylvania for 2 years. Night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. We had about 80 residents spread across 3 wings: standard care facility, elderly patients, dementia care, hospice. The facility had a locked memory care unit for residents with severe dementia and behavioural issues. 12 rooms, secured entrance, special training required. I was assigned to that unit for most of my shifts. Working memory care at night is surreal. Residents with dementia often have disrupted sleep cycles. They'll wander, get confused about where they are, and sometimes get aggressive. It's sad. You do your best to comfort them, redirect them, keep them safe. But some behaviours are harder to explain. There was this one resident, I'll call her Margaret, who'd been in the locked unit for 3 years when I started. Margaret was 81, non-verbal, severe Alzheimer's. She'd been declining for a decade, couldn't recognise her family anymore, didn't respond to her name. But every night around 2:30 a.m, Margaret would wake up. She'll get out of bed, walk to the door, and stand there, facing the hallway, just standing, staring out through the small window in her door. This happened every single night, same time, like clockwork. I asked the veteran staff about it. They said Margaret had been doing this for over a year. No explanation. Some dementia patients have repetitive behaviours. It's not unusual. What was unusual was what she'll do when staff approached her. If you open her door to redirect her to bed, she'll look past you, focus on something down the hallway. She'll lift her hand and point. Always pointing at the same spot. End of the hallway. Room 12. Room 12 was our most difficult resident. I'll call him Joseph. He was 76, dementia with severe behavioural issues. History of violence before admission. He'd hit staff, throw things, had to be physically restrained multiple times. Joseph terrified the night shift staff. When he was awake, you couldn't turn your back on him. He'll grab at you, shove you, try to hurt you. During his bad episodes, it took 3 people to handle him safely. But here's the strange part. Margaret would only do her pointed behaviour on nights when Joseph was awake. If Joseph was sleeping, Margaret would stand at her door for a few minutes and then go back to bed. But if Joseph was awake, if he was wandering or agitated, Margaret would stand at her door and point at his room. For hours. Wouldn't go back to bed until Joseph was asleep. Like she was warning us, telling us to watch him. I mentioned this to my supervisor. She said dementia patients sometimes develop strange awareness of their environment. Maybe Margaret could hear Joseph when he was awake. Maybe it triggered something in her memory. But Margaret's room was at the opposite end of the hall from Joseph's, and she was mostly deaf. She couldn't hear much of anything. Then we had an incident that changed how I thought about Margaret. It was a Tuesday night, around 2:45 a.m. I was doing my rounds, checking on residents. Margaret was at her door, standing, staring down the hallway, pointing at room 12. Joseph had been agitated earlier but had finally settled around 2:30. I checked him 15 minutes ago. He was in bed, appeared to be sleeping. But Margaret was still pointing, still staring. I walked past her room towards room 12 to double check on Joseph. As I approached the door, I heard movement inside. Not unusual, even sleeping residents shift around. I looked through the door window. Joseph was awake. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, facing the door, staring at me. His expression was wrong, cold, focused, not the confused, agitated look he usually had. This was different. I opened the door slowly. Joseph, are you okay? Do you need anything? He didn't respond, just stared. His hands were at his side. He was gripping something. I couldn't see what. Joseph, what do you have there? He lifted his hands. He was holding a pillowcase, twisted into a rope. I radioed for backup immediately. Code Grey, locked unit, room 12. Joseph stood up, started walking towards me, slowly, still holding that twisted pillowcase. I stepped back into the hallway. He followed. He wasn't aggressive, not yet, but something was very wrong. He moved with purpose, intent. My backup arrived, 2 other CNAs. We tried to redirect Joseph back to his room. He wouldn't go. He kept walking down the hallway, towards Margaret's room. He stopped in front of her door. Margaret was still standing there, still pointing. But now she was pointing directly at Joseph. They were maybe 3 feet apart, a door between them. Joseph stared at her through the window. Margaret stared back. Then Joseph dropped the pillowcase. He turned and walked back to his room, got into bed, and went to sleep. Margaret watched him until he was in his room. Then she stopped pointing, just went back to her own bed. No issues for the rest of the night. We filed an instant report. The pillowcase was analysed. It had been twisted so tight enough to potentially strangle someone. Joseph had taken it from his own pillow and fashioned it into a weapon. The doctor evaluated Joseph the next day, increased his medication, said he was having episodes of nocturnal aggression, not uncommon in dementia patients. But I kept thinking about Margaret, about how she's been pointing at Joseph's room before I even knew he was awake, before I even knew he had that pillowcase, like she knew, like she could sense he was dangerous that night. I started paying more attention to Margaret's behaviour. Over the next few months, I documented it. Every night at 2:30 a.m, she'll wake up and go to her door. On nights when Joseph was sleeping peacefully, she'll stand there for a few minutes and go back to bed. On nights when Joseph was awake and calm, she'll stand there and watch but wouldn't point. On nights when Joseph was agitated or dangerous, she would point, and she wouldn't stop until he was back in bed or asleep. She was tracking him, monitoring him, warning us. 3 other CNAs noticed the same pattern. We started using Margaret as an early warning system. If she was pointing, we'll check on Joseph immediately. Every time, he was either awake and agitated or planning something, hoarding items, trying to get out of his room, displaying aggressive behaviour. Margaret was right 100% of the time. The supervisor dismissed it as coincidence, said we were seeing patterns that weren't there, said dementia patients don't have that kind of awareness. But then we found out about Margaret's history. Before she developed Alzheimer's, she'd been a psychiatric nurse. For 30 years she worked in a LOTS facility very similar to ours. She specialised in patients with violent behaviour disorders. Margaret had spent decades managing dangerous patients, reading their body language, predicting their behaviours, keeping people safe, and somewhere deep in her deteriorating brain, underneath the dementia, she was still doing that job, still monitoring, still warning, still trying to protect people. Joseph died in his sleep about 8 months after I started. Natural causes. His heart just finally gave out. The night he died, Margaret didn't go to her door at 2:30 a.m. She slept through the night. First time in over a year. She never did the door behaviour again, never pointed down the hallway. It was like her job was done. Margaret died 6 months later, peaceful, in her sleep. I don't work in nursing homes anymore, but I still think about Margaret sometimes, about how even when everything else was gone, her memories, her words, her recognition of her own family, some part of her was still there, still watching, still protecting. And I think about Joseph, about what he might have done on those nights when Margaret was pointing. What was he planning? Who he might have hurt if she hadn't have warned us. Dementia takes everything from people, their memories, their personalities, their ability to recognise the world around them. But maybe it doesn't take everything. Maybe the deepest parts of who they were, the core of their purpose, their training, their instincts, maybe those survive, even when nothing else does. I worked as a night auditor at a hotel in Savannah, Georgia for about a year and a half. Small boutique hotel, 40 rooms, built in the 1890s. The kind of place tourists love because it's historic and charming. Night audit shift was 11 PM to 7 AM, mostly quiet. I'd check guests in if they arrived late, handle any requests, run the accounting reports, and monitor the security cameras. Easy job. The hotel had a reputation for being haunted. Savannah is full of that stuff, tourists eat it up. The owner played into it. We had our ghost tour that came through twice a week. The guide would tell stories about Civil War soldiers dying in the building, about a woman who jumped from the third floor window in 1924. I didn't believe any of it, thought it was just marketing. But there was one room that bothered me. Room 237, second floor, end of the hallway. It was our least booked room. Guests complained about it, said it was too cold, or they heard noises, or they just felt uncomfortable. We had to comp their stay or move them to a different room. The housekeeping staff hated cleaning it. They'd always do it in pairs, never alone. When I asked why, they said that the room felt wrong. The hotel owner told me that room 237 had a history. In 1983, a guest had died there, heart attack. He'd been staying alone, was found 3 days later when housekeeping finally entered after he missed checkout. Ever since, that room had problems. Guests would call the front desk in the middle of the night complaining about sounds from room 237, footsteps, furniture moving, running water. But when we'd check, the room would be empty, no one booked. I worked there 6 months before I had my first real experience with room 237. It was around 2:30 AM on a Tuesday, dead night, only 12 rooms occupied. I was at the front desk doing paperwork when the phone rang. Internal call from room 235, right next to 237. The guest was complaining about noises coming through the wall. Said it sounded like someone was moving furniture around in 237, dragging something heavy. Asked me to quiet them down. I checked the system. Room 237 was vacant, had been for 3 days. I told the guest no one was in that room, but I'll go and check it out. I took the master key and I went upstairs, walked down the second floor hallway to room 237, listened at the door, nothing, silent. I knocked anyway. Hotel staff, open the door. Unlocked it and went in. The room was dark, cold, colder than it should have been. AC was off, but it felt like I was walking into a refrigerator. I turned on the light. The room looked untouched, bed made, fresh towels, everything in place. I checked the bathroom, the closet, nothing. But the coldness was intense. I could see my breath. In Georgia, in summer. I went back downstairs and called maintenance, asked them to check the AC unit in 237. They came up, checked it. The unit was working fine, set to 72 degrees like all the other rooms. But the room was reading 34 degrees on their thermometer. They couldn't explain it. They changed the thermostat, checked the vents. Nothing wrong with the system. The room was just cold. The guest in 235 called again 20 minutes later, said the noise had stopped, but now they hear the water running through the pipes. Constant running water from 237's bathroom. I went back up, let myself into 237, went to the bathroom. All the fixtures were off, no running water, but I could hear it too. The sound of water running through pipes, coming from the walls. Maintenance checked again, no leaks, no running water, but we could all hear it. We moved the guests from 235 to a different floor. They checked out early the next morning, left a bad review online. After that night, I started paying more attention to room 237. I'll check the security cameras. We had one in the second floor hallway, pointing towards the elevators. It captured the door to 237 in the far left of the frame. Over the next few months, I'd see things on the camera that didn't make sense. The door to 237 would be open when I checked the feed, then close the next time, then open again. No one entering or leaving, just the door changing position. The "Do Not Disturb" sign would appear on the handle, then disappear, then appear again. The room was always vacant when this happened. One night, I watched the live feed for an hour straight, from 3 to 4 a.m. At 3:47, the door to 237 opened, slowly, like someone inside was pulling it open from the inside. I grabbed my keys and I ran upstairs, got there in less than a minute. The door was closed. I unlocked it, went in, no one was there. The room was freezing cold again, but the bathroom light was on now. I knew it had been off when I checked earlier. I turned it off and I left, locked the door. When I got back downstairs and I checked the camera, the bathroom light was visible from under the door. It was back on. I called the owner the next morning and told her everything. She listened, then told me the full story about the man who died in 1983. He hadn't died of a heart attack. He killed himself, hanged himself from the bathroom door frame. The hotel had just covered it up, changed the official story to avoid bad publicity, paid off the family, the coroner, anyone who knew. The man's name was Richard Marsh. He'd been staying at the hotel alone. Left a note saying he couldn't take it anymore. Didn't say what it was. Housekeeping found him after 3 days. But here's the disturbing part. The police report mentions something odd. When they found Richard's body, the bathroom light was off, the water was running, both the sink and the shower, full blast, and the door to the room was wide open, deadbolt engaged so he couldn't close. Like Richard wanted someone to find him quickly, had set everything up so housekeeping would notice right away, the light, the water, the door. But no one found him for 3 days. The open door, the light, the running water. Housekeeping walked past that room dozens of times and never noticed. The "Do Not Disturb" sign had been on the handle, they said. But Richard didn't put it there. He left the door open specifically so people would check. Someone, or something, had closed that door, put up that sign, and made sure Richard hung there for 3 days before anyone found him. The owner told me she tried to get the room blessed, exorcised, cleansed, everything. Nothing worked. The room was just wrong. Always cold, always active. They kept it in the booking system to avoid suspicion, but they tried not to put guests in there unless they had no choice. I worked at that hotel another 8 months. I never went into room 237 again unless absolutely necessary, and when I did, I propped the door open with the deadbolt, just like Richard had tried to do, because I think he's still trying, still turning on lights, still running water, still opening that door, still trying to get someone's attention before it's too late, before something closes the door on them too. I quit in 2019 and moved to Atlanta, got a job at a corporate hotel, new building, no history, but I looked up room 237 recently, checked the reviews, guests still complain, still hear noises, still feel the cold. And every few months, someone mentions the same thing in their reviews. We could hear water running all night from the room next door, but when we complained, the front desk said no one was in that room. Richard's still there, still trying to be found, and whatever closed that door on him is still there too, making sure he stays. I worked hospital security in Portland, Oregon from 2017 to 2020, night shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. St. Vincent Medical Center, 4 buildings connected by skywalks, over 500 beds. The hospital had closed an entire wing 3 years before I started. Building C, the original 1970 structure. Failed inspections, too expensive to renovate. They locked it down and left it, waiting on demolition approval. But it was still connected, still part of our patrol route. Once per shift, check for break-ins, water leaks, make sure doors stayed locked. Most guards hated Building C. Dark, empty, power cut except emergency stairwell lighting. You needed a flashlight to see anything. I didn't mind at first. Quiet, quick patrol, 15 minutes, done. Around my 3rd month, something started changing. I'd walk past the 2nd floor nurse's station, curved desk, old computers, everything buried in 3 years of dust. One night the dust had been disturbed, fresh marks, like someone dragged their fingers across it. I swept my flashlight around it, nobody there. All patient rooms empty, doors open. I checked them, nothing. I reported it. My supervisor said probably maintenance, but maintenance said no one had been in Building C for months. The next week, a chair in one of the patient rooms had moved. It had been against the wall. I had photos from previous patrols. Now it was in the middle of the room. I started documenting everything with photos, comparing them. Things kept changing. A locked door would be open next patrol. A curtain around the bed would be closed when it had been opened. Small things, but constant. My supervisor reviewed the security camera footage. The Building C's cameras were disconnected. Only coverage was the entrance. One camera on the double doors from the main hospital. 2 weeks of footage showed no one entering. Doors stayed locked, but things inside kept moving. That's when my supervisor told me Building C's real history. It hadn't closed just for failed inspections. There had been incidents. Patients reporting someone in their rooms at night. Someone who wasn't staff. Nurses hearing footsteps in empty hallways. Equipment moved to wrong places. 2 patients died under suspicious circumstances. One fell down the 4th floor stairwell, somehow got out unsupervised. The other died in their sleep, heart failure officially, but the family insisted something was wrong. The patient had been recovering, no risk factors. After those deaths, staff refused to work there. The hospital used the inspections as an excuse to close the wing. The previous night guard, the one who had my job before me, he quit because of Building C. He'd seen something on the floor 4 that made him walk out mid-shift. I should have quit then, but I'd been doing security for 6 years. I didn't believe in supernatural bullshit. I thought someone was getting in somehow. Former employee with keys maybe. I'll catch them. I varied my timing. Instead of routine 2 AM checks, I'd go at 1 AM, then 3 AM, then midnight, a random schedule. One night at 1:30 AM, I caught something. I entered Building C, locked the doors behind me, took the stairs to the 2nd floor. I was walking down the main hallway when I heard footsteps above me. 3rd floor, steady, someone walking directly above my head. I grabbed my radio. Dispatch confirmed no one else was in Building C. She'd send backup. I headed for the stairwell. If someone was squatting, I wanted to see them before backup scared them off. I reached the 3rd floor landing. The door to the 3rd floor was propped open with a door stop. I checked that door last week. It had been closed. I could see into the hallway. Dark, my flashlight beam cutting through dust. The hallway looked empty. The footsteps were above me now. 4th floor. Whoever it was had heard me coming. I radioed backup. 3 minutes out. I told them I was pursuing to the 4th floor. Up the stairs, 4th floor door closed. I tested the handle. Unlocked. Pushed it open slowly. The 4th floor had been the psychiatric ward. Narrow hallways, heavy doors with small windows. Some rooms with padded walls. I stepped into the hallway, heart hammering now. This was real. Someone was in here. My hand hovered over my radio, ready to call for immediate help. Then I heard breathing, heavy, ragged, like someone who'd been running. "Security!" I shouted. "Come out now! Police are on the way!" Breathing stopped. A door closed down the hallway to my right, one of the patient rooms, sharp sound echoing off the empty walls. I moved towards it, every instinct screaming to wait for backup. The room door was closed. I shined my light through the small window. Empty hospital bed, chair, nothing else, no one visible. But the bathroom door inside the room was closing, slowly, like someone had just stepped inside and was pulling it shut. I radioed my position, back up 60 seconds out. I should have waited. I pushed into the patient room. The bathroom door was closed now. I could hear breathing again from inside, loud, desperate. "Come out!" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hands where I can see them!" No response, just that awful breathing. I grabbed the bathroom door handle, yanked it open fast, flashlight up, body tense for a fight. The bathroom was empty, small space, toilet, sink, no windows, no way out. No one was there. The breathing stopped. Footsteps behind me. I spun around, adrenaline spiking. My backup, 2 Portland PD officers, hospital security supervisor. We searched the entire 4th floor, every room, every bathroom, every closet. Found nothing. But we found something else in the stairwell. Footprints in the dust on the 4th floor landing. Fresh, bare feet, leading up from the 3rd floor into the 4th floor hallway. The prints stopped at the door. Just stopped, like whoever made them had walked up the stairs and just vanished into the air. We reviewed entrance footage again. No one had entered. Doors had been locked the entire time. I'd locked them behind me when I went in. They were still locked when backup arrived. Whoever I heard hadn't entered through the main doors. They were already inside. I requested day shift transfer the next week. They approved. The new guard assigned to Building C nights, he lasted 2 weeks before quitting. The hospital got demolition approval in late 2020. Tore it down over 3 months later. I wasn't there. I'd moved to a different job. But I heard from a former co-worker during that demolition. They found something. Behind the drywall on the 4th floor, a space about 3 feet wide running the length of a hallway. Someone could fit in that space, could move through the walls, hidden, could watch through gaps in the drywall. They found marks inside, scratches on the wood studs, like someone had been living in there for a long time. The demolition crew found other things, food wrappers, water bottles, a sleeping bag and photos. Dozens of photos of patients, nurses, staff, taken through gaps in the walls. Some dated back to 2013, a year before Building C closed. Police investigated, never determined who'd been living in the walls. No fingerprints, no DNA matches, just evidence that someone had been there, watching. The theory was a patient or former staff member had been using that hidden space. Someone who knew about the gap from construction. Maybe someone who'd been squatting there since the building even closed. But I think about those footprints in the stairwell, how they just stopped at the door, how the breathing came from an empty bathroom with no way out. I think about walking through those dark hallways, feeling watched, because someone was there. Someone in the walls, inches away, watching through the cracks. I never worked hospital security again. Too many dark hallways, too many empty rooms, too many places to hide. And I wonder if they really found everything in those walls. If they checked every gap, every space, every hidden area. Or if there's still someone there, still watching, in a building that doesn't exist anymore. I worked night shift at an Amazon fulfillment center in Ohio for 11 months in 2018 to 2019. Massive building, size of 10 football fields. Night shift was from 7 PM to 5 AM, picking orders, packing boxes, loading trucks, 50 people spread across a space built for 500. You could go 15 minutes without seeing another person. I worked Zone K, back corner of the building, electronics mostly, high value items in locked cages. About 4 months in, I started noticing someone I didn't recognise. A guy, maybe late 30s, wearing standard Amazon vest and badge. I'd seen him in my zone occasionally, just standing between the aisles, looking at his scanner like he was checking an order. I figured he was new, people came and went constantly, but I kept seeing him, always between 2 and 4 AM, always in Zone K or nearby. He never made eye contact, never acknowledged me, just stood there with his scanner and walked away. After a dozen sightings, I realised something was weird. I'd never seen him actually pick an order, never seen him push a cart or load a box. He was always just standing there, looking at his scanner. I mentioned it to my supervisor. She didn't know who I was talking about. Asked for a description. White guy, maybe 6 feet, short brown hair, Amazon vest, badge clipped to his belt. She said there was no one matching that description on night crew. Asked if I'd seen his badge number. I hadn't. The next time I saw him, I made sure to look at his badge. Too far to read the number, but I could see it was legitimate. Amazon logo, photo, barcode. I tried to get closer. He walked away, turned down an aisle. I followed. The aisle was long, maybe 80 feet, and I could see all the way to the end. He wasn't there. No way he could reach the other end that fast. I checked nearby aisles. Nothing. Gone. This happened 3 more times. I'd seen him, follow. He'd vanished. My supervisor reviewed security footage from the times I reported seeing him. The camera showed me walking around, looking down aisles. No one else was in my zone. No one matching the description. She thought I was messing with her, but I wasn't. Other workers reported the same thing. A guy in Zone J saw someone in an Amazon vest, standing around, never working. Another picker saw someone in the loading area who didn't belong. Then everything changed on the Thursday around 3 AM. I was restocking a high shelf, using a ladder. I heard footsteps. I turned around. It was him, standing maybe 10 feet away, staring at me. Not at his scanner, at me. Direct eye contact. I froze. "Hey, do you need something?" No response, just staring. I climbed down. He didn't move. I could see his badge clearly now. Photo, barcode, employee number. It looked real. "Are you looking for something? Can I help you?" He finally spoke. Just one word. "No." Then he turned and walked away. Slow, deliberate, disappeared around a corner. I called my supervisor immediately. Told her I just talked to him. He was real. Check the cameras. She reviewed the footage in real time. I was still on the radio with her. She said the camera showed me standing alone in Zone K, climbing down a ladder, looking at nothing, talking to no one. I was on the camera, clear as day, but he wasn't there. She asked if I was on any medication, if I'd taken anything. I wasn't. She told me to finish my shift in the break room. I sat there for 2 hours, shaking. Around 4:30 AM, another picker came in. Sandra, from Zone L. She looked terrified. She'd just seen someone in her zone, a guy in an Amazon vest, standing at the end of the aisle. When she approached, he spoke to her, said, "You shouldn't be here," then walked away and vanished. Sandra quit that night, walked out mid-shift. Over the next week, things escalated. 3 more workers reported seeing him, always the same description, always between 2 and 4 AM. But now he was interacting, speaking. One picker said he followed her. She turned around multiple times and he was always there, 20 feet back, keeping pace. When she reached the break room and looked back, he was gone. Another worker said he found the man standing in front of his locker in the employee area, just standing there. When the worker yelled at him, the man said, "This used to be mine," and walked through the wall. Actually, through it. The worker demonstrated, said the man just kept walking like the wall wasn't there. Management finally held a meeting, said there'd been reports of someone trespassing in the facility. They'd increased security patrols, installed new cameras. If anyone saw this person, don't approach, call security immediately. But I checked with security. They reviewed every camera in the building for the past month. No unidentified person, no one matching our description. The only people on camera were the registered employees. Whoever, whatever, we was seeing wasn't showing up on the video. I did some research, talked to a warehouse veteran who'd been there since the building opened 7 years earlier. Asked if anyone else had reported strange things. He got quiet and told me this story. During construction, a worker died on the site. Night shift accident. Fell from the scaffolding in the section between zones K, J and L. Broke his neck. The company kept it quiet, just paid off the family, finished construction. The worker's name was David Chen. He'd been 38, married, 2 kids. He'd been working double shifts to save money, fell asleep on the scaffolding. When he fell, he hit a concrete support beam, died instantly. But here's what the veteran told me that made my blood run cold. David had been wearing his work vest when he died. Hard hat, vest, work badge. When they found his body, his badge was still clipped to his vest. His employee photo showed a white guy, late 30s, short brown hair, exactly what we all been seeing. The veteran said over the years, at least 20 night shift workers had reported seeing someone who matched David's description. Always in zones K, J and L, always between 2 and 4 AM. The hours David had been working when he died. And in the last 2 years, the sightings had changed. David wasn't just appearing anymore, he was interacting, speaking, following people, like he was getting stronger, more aware. The veteran said the words David spoke, "You shouldn't be here, this used to be mine," they made sense. Maybe David didn't understand he was dead. Maybe he thought he was trespassing in this workspace. Maybe he was just trying to warn us, or chase us away, or claim what he thought still belonged to him. I put in my notice the next day, finished out my 2 weeks. Every shift, I saw him, sometimes standing in my zone, sometimes walking through the aisles. Once, I turned a corner and he was right there, inches from my face. He looked at me and said, "It's almost over." I don't know what he meant, didn't want to find out. On my last shift, I was leaving through the employee exit around 5 AM. I turned back for one last look at the building. Through the high windows, I could see into Zone K. He was standing there in the aisle, watching me leave. He raised his hand, waved. I got a job at UPS Hub after that. Day shift, similar building, more people. Haven't worked in a warehouse that big since. But I heard from a former co-worker 6 months after I left. 3 night shift workers had quit within a week, all from zones K, J and L. All reported the same thing. David was getting more aggressive, blocking aisles, standing in front of equipment, appearing suddenly in front of workers. One woman said he grabbed her arm. She felt the pressure, saw his hand on her sleeve, but when she looked down, there was nothing there, just a sensation of being held. Management eventually closed zones K, J and L for renovations, moved all operations to other zones. The renovations have been ongoing for over a year now. I think they're not renovating, I think they're just sealing those zones off, because they can't stop David, can't make him leave, can't explain to workers why they keep seeing someone who doesn't exist. So they're giving him what he wants, they're leaving those zones empty, letting him have his workspace back, where he can stand in the aisles, holding his scanner, doing the job he was doing when he died, forever. I worked graveyard shift at a 7-Eleven in suburban Phoenix from 2016 to 2017. 11 PM to 7 AM, 5 nights a week. Typical work, sell cigarettes and energy drinks, restock, deal with drunks and insomniacs. Most late night customers were regulars. You see the same people at 3 AM. Truckers, shift workers, insomniacs. You get to know them. There was one regular I'll never forget, the man in the grey jacket. He came in almost every night between 2:30 and 3 AM. Same grey jacket, jeans, white sneakers every time. Always brought the same thing, large black coffee and Marabou Reds. Always paid in exact change. Never spoke except, "Thank you," when I handed him his coffee. I'd see him pull up in an old Honda Civic, park under the far light, come in, conduct his transaction, and leave. Same routine for about 6 weeks. Then one night, he deviated. It was 2:45 AM. He came in at his usual time, poured his coffee, but instead of coming to the register, he walked down the snack aisle, slowly, looking at the shelves. This was new. He never browsed. He stopped halfway down the aisle, stood there staring at the chips, didn't pick anything up, just stared. I watched him on the security monitor. He stood there for almost 5 minutes, not moving. Finally, he walked to the register, placed his coffee down. I rang him up, coffee and cigarettes. He paid in the exact change. But as he turned to leave, he stopped, looked directly at me for the first time in 6 weeks. "Don't go in the back room tonight." That was it. Then he left. I stood there, confused. The back room was where we kept stock, supplies and our break area. I went back there multiple times per shift. It was part of my job. Why would he tell me not to do it? I checked the security monitor for the back room. Storage area, shelves, walk-in fridge, employee bathroom. Everything looked normal. I tried to ignore it. The guy was probably just weird. But it bothered me. I didn't go into the back room for the next hour. Did everything from behind the counter. Around 4 AM, I needed to restock the soda cooler. Product was in the back. I couldn't avoid it anymore. I unlocked the security door, went into the back, turned on the lights. Everything looked normal. I grabbed the dolly, started loading cases of soda, and that's when I heard it. A thump from inside the walk-in fridge, like something had fallen. I froze. The fridge wasn't large, maybe 8 by 10 feet. We kept drinks, food items, nothing heavy that should be falling. I walked to the fridge door. It was closed but not latched. I pulled it open. The fridge was cold. Bright from the overhead light, shelves full of products. Nothing looked disturbed. Then I saw movement, behind the shelves in the back corner. I stepped into the fridge to look, and that's when I saw him, a man, crouched in the corner behind beer cases, hiding. I yelled and backed out, hit my radio. "Intruder in the building! Back room!" I ran to the front counter, locked the security door behind me, and called 911. Police arrived in 6 minutes, cleared the back room, found the man still in the fridge, hiding. In his possession, a knife, duct tape, rope and zip ties. The police said he'd broken in through the back delivery door before midnight, picked the locks. He'd been hiding in that fridge for over 3 hours, waiting for me to come back alone. When they interviewed him, he admitted he'd been watching the store for weeks, knew overnight shift was one employee, knew I'd have to come to the back eventually. He was waiting to ambush me. He wouldn't say what he planned to do, but the knife, tape and rope suggested nothing good. Police asked if I'd seen anything suspicious. I told them about the man in the grey jacket, about the warning. They were confused, asked for security footage. I pulled it up. 2:47 AM, the man in the grey jacket at my register. The officer watched, looked at me. "There's no one there." I looked at the screen. The footage showed me behind the register, ringing up a coffee and cigarettes, taking money, but the area where the customer should be standing was empty. I was conducting a transaction with no one. The officer asked if I was on medication, if I'd taken anything. I hadn't. He suggested I might have hallucinated from lack of sleep, suggested I get checked out, but the registered transaction was real. The coffee was sold, the cigarettes were sold, the money was in the drawer. $5.23, exact change. Someone had brought that coffee, someone had warned me. I quit the next day, my manager understood. I looked up the store's history. I found an article from 2008. A clerk had been murdered during an overnight shift, stabbed to death in the back room by an intruder who'd hidden in a walk-in fridge. The clerk's name was David Reeves. He was 28. The killer was never caught. The article included a photo of David. He was wearing a grey jacket. I showed the photo to my manager before I left, asked if he recognised him. My manager went pale, said David had worked there, said David was a good employee, always came in early, stayed late if they needed coverage, always reliable. My manager said something else that made my skin crawl. He said after David's murder, other overnight clerks reported strange things. Customers coming in who didn't appear on camera, transactions that occurred but showed no customer. Always between 2 and 3 a.m, always buying black coffee and Marabou Reds, always at the register, conducting business, even though they were dead. My manager said 3 clerks quit in the months after David's death because of it. The company eventually stopped mentioning it, wrote it off as stress, grief, imagination. But every few years, a new overnight clerk would report the same thing. A regular customer in a grey jacket, always polite, always buying the same items, and occasionally, on nights when something bad was about to happen, that customer would give a warning. Don't go into the back room. Lock the doors early tonight. Call the police. Simple warnings, and every time, every single time, the clerk who heeded the warning avoided harm, a robbery, an assault, an intruder. David Reeves died in that back room in 2008, as some part of him stayed, still coming to work, still buying his coffee and cigarettes, still watching over the overnight clerk, making sure no one else dies the same way he did. I got a job at a coffee shop after that, day shift, haven't worked overnight since, but sometimes I still think about David. About him pulling up in his Honda Civic every night, walking into the store, buying his coffee, going through the motions of life even though he's gone. And I think about the man in the fridge. What would he have done if David hadn't warned me, if I'd gone back there without calling 911 first? That store is still open 24/7. There's always an overnight clerk, always someone alone between midnight and dawn. And if someone comes through that back door with a knife and bad intentions, I hope David's still there, still buying his coffee, still watching, still warning, before it's too late. I worked overnight at the Chevron station outside of Tucson for 8 months in 2019. Midnight to 8 a.m, 4 nights a week. Long stretch of Route 10 between Phoenix and Tucson, mostly truckers and travellers. The previous night clerk quit suddenly after 3 weeks, stopped showing up, wouldn't answer calls. I didn't think much of it. The station had a walk-in cooler in the back for restocking, heavy door, old seal. I always propped it open with a milk crate, basic safety. Around 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in my second month, I saw him for the first time. I was at the register checking the security monitor, 4 cameras, parking lot, front door, register area, and one pointing at the back near the cooler. The back camera showed a man standing at the rear exit door, just standing there in the dark, facing the door from outside. The back door was solid metal, no windows. He couldn't see in. He was just standing there, maybe 2 feet from the door. I watched for a minute. He didn't move at all, didn't try the handle, didn't look around, just stood there, perfectly still. I checked the parking lot camera. Nobody parked out back, just 2 semis up front of my car. When I switched back to the rear camera, he was gone. I told myself it was transient, forget about it. 3 nights later, same time, same spot. I watched him for 10 minutes. He never moved, not once. He was like a statue. I called the non-emergency line. They said they'd send someone when available. A deputy showed up 40 minutes later. We checked the perimeter, nobody there. He told me to call 911 if it happened again, and I felt threatened. It kept happening 2 or 3 times a week, always around 1:30 and 3 a.m. Always perfectly still. He'd been there for anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour, then just disappeared between camera checks. After 6 weeks, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. I was reviewing footage, comparing dates. The man was getting closer to the door, week by week, inch by inch. First time I saw him, he was about 10 feet from the door. A month later, 5 feet. Now he was close enough that if he leaned forward, his face would touch the metal. I reported it to the manager. He said the previous clerk complained about the same thing. That's why he quit. Manager just thought it was a homeless guy, harmless, but I realized something else. The man only appeared on nights when I had to restock the walk-in cooler. It was part of my routine. Check inventory around 2 a.m, restock what was low. He only showed up when I was scheduled to go into that cooler, when I'd be in the back area, alone, inside a sealed metal box. I changed my routine, restocked earlier or later, skipped it some nights. The man stopped appearing. 2 weeks of nothing, then my schedule changed. Friday and Saturday coverage, nights I didn't usually work. Manager specifically asked me to do a full cooler restocks both nights because delivery was delayed. Friday night at 1:47 a.m, the man appeared, but not at the back door. He was at the side entrance, the employer door I'd used at shift start, trying the handle, testing it. I locked it per policy, but he kept trying, methodical, like he was checking if I'd made a mistake. I called 911, told them someone was trying to break in. Dispatch said 15 minutes. He stopped trying the side door, walked around the back, and stood there with the same perfect stillness. Then I checked the front camera. He was at the entrance, face pressed against the glass, eyes locked on me. I couldn't breathe. He was 30 feet away, just glass between us. His expression was completely neutral, not angry, not threatening, just watching. My phone rang, dispatch asking for an update. I told her he was at the front door now. She said 3 minutes out. I looked up from my phone at the actual front window. Nothing. I looked back at the monitor. He was still there on camera, face against glass. But when I looked up again, empty parking lot, nothing. The police arrived. I showed them the footage. They reviewed it frame by frame. The officer looked confused, rewound the front camera and showed me. The timestamp was wrong. The image of the man at the front door was from 6 weeks earlier. Old footage. The system had glitched. All cameras showing recordings, not live feeds. For at least 30 minutes, which meant I had no idea where he actually was, if he'd been at the front or the back, or if he found a way inside. They searched the building, walk-in cooler, storage, bathroom, ceiling spaces. Nothing. All locked secure, no forced entry. They stayed until shift end. An officer followed me to my car. I quit the next day. My manager finally told me the truth about the previous clerk. He hadn't just quit. Morning shift found him in the walk-in cooler, door sealed shut. He'd been trapped for 3 hours, hypothermic, frostbitten. Said someone shut the door while he was restocking. Said he heard footsteps outside the whole time. Security footage showed no one in the building, just him going into the cooler, door closing on its own. Nothing. The clerk had been screaming about a man watching from outside, about someone at the doors, but footage never showed anyone. The manager didn't believe him, thought he panicked, pulled the door shut accidentally. Well, I believe him, because I've seen that man. I've watched him for weeks, watched him getting closer. 6 months after I quit, the station closed, property issues supposedly, but I found a news article from 2015. A night clerk disappeared mid-shift from that same station. Car in the lot, phone and wallet at the register. Security footage showed him walking towards the back area around 2 a.m. He never came back. They never found him. The article said in the weeks before he disappeared, he filed multiple police reports about someone loitering behind the building. Police never found anyone. I wonder if he's seen the man too, if he watched him getting closer week after week, if he made the mistake of going into that cooler when the man was finally close enough to reach the door. I still have the screenshots I took, timestamps showing the man at that back door, getting closer each week. I sent them to police after reading the article. They never responded. Sometimes I think about that sealed cooler door, about being trapped inside with frozen air and metal walls, about hearing footsteps outside, about knowing someone shut that door deliberately and now they're waiting for the cold to do its work, about how long you'll survive, how long you'll keep hoping someone would open it. And I think about the man standing perfectly still, getting closer and closer, waiting for the night when someone forgets to prop the door open, when someone's hands are full and they let it swing shut behind them, when that seal clicks into place. Then he'll just have to wait. 3 hours later when morning shift arrives, the cameras won't show anything, just a door that closed on its own, just another accident. I wonder how many night clerks worked there over the years, how many saw him at the back door, getting closer, how many quit before it was too late, and how many didn't. I work private security for a company contracted with industrial parks. Night patrol, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Solo work in a marked vehicle. Check building perimeters, respond to alarms. In 2020, I got assigned to a business park in suburban Detroit. 20 buildings, mostly offices, few light manufacturing facilities, all closed at night. My job was to patrol the grounds, check each building twice per shift. The company gave me a radio, standard two-way, encrypted frequency. Only our security personnel and dispatch use it. The first few weeks were routine, empty lots, locked doors, nothing unusual. Around my 4th week, I started hearing clicking on the radio, between my check-ins when the frequency should have been silent. Click, click, click. Someone keying their mic on and off, no voice, just clicking. I asked dispatch, they weren't hearing it, said probably interference, bad connection. The clicking continued, always between 1 and 3 a.m, always the same pattern, 3 clicks, pause, 3 clicks. Then one night, at 2:15 a.m, I heard a voice. I was driving between buildings when a radio crackled, a man's voice, quiet, barely audible. Building 7. 2 words, then silence. I checked my route. Building 7 was across the park. I radioed dispatch, asked if they sent that message. They said no transmissions. They asked me to check building 7 anyway. I drove there. 2-story office building, insurance company. The parking lot was empty. Perimeter check showed all doors locked, windows secure, nothing unusual. Building 7 secure, I radioed over. Immediately, a voice came back. Inside. I stopped, stared at the radio. Dispatch responded. Repeat your last. I keyed my mic. I didn't say anything. Did you hear that? Dispatch said they only heard my transmission, nothing else. The voice came through again, clearer. Go inside. I grabbed my flashlights and got out. Main entrance was locked. I had a master key for emergencies. Dispatch, I'm entering building 7. Possible intruder. The lobby was dark except for exit signs. I swept my flashlight across reception, waiting area, hallways. Dispatch, clearing first floor. I checked offices, conference rooms, break rooms. Empty. No signs of entry. I moved to the stairs. As I climbed to the second floor, my radio crackled. Second door, left. Specific directions. Whoever this was, they were telling me exactly where to go. I keyed my radio. Dispatch, I'm hearing that voice again, giving me instructions. Do you copy? Negative. Not receiving any other transmissions. Proceed with caution. I reached the second floor, hallway with offices on both sides. I counted from the stairwell. Second door on the left. Door closed. Nameplate. Conference room B. I tested the handle. Locked. Used my master key. Pushed it open slowly. The conference room was empty. Long table, chairs, whiteboard, windows overlooking the parking lot. But the room was cold. Much colder than the rest of the building. My radio. Look under the table. I shined my flashlight underneath. At first, nothing. Then I saw something taped to the underside. Small object, size of a deck of cards. I pulled it free. A voice recorder. Old model, tape based. The display showed it was on. Recording. I pressed stop. Rewound. Play. The voice from the recorder was the same voice from my radio. Building 7. Inside. Go inside. Second door. Left. Look under the table. A loop. Someone had recorded these instructions and left the device running. But that didn't explain how I was hearing it on my encrypted radio. The recorder wasn't transmitting, it was just playing audio. There was no way it could broadcast. I bagged the recorder, called dispatch. They said leave the building, file a report. Police investigated, analysed the recorder. The voice was never identified. No fingerprints. It had been there for weeks based on dust patterns. The theory? Someone broke in weeks earlier, planted a recorder, was trying to lure security to that room. But why? And how were they broadcasting to my radio? Police checked the conference room thoroughly, found nothing unusual. No cameras, no devices, no evidence of what someone wanted us to find. The building owner reviewed security logs. Building 7's alarm had triggered 6 weeks earlier at 2:30 AM. Previous security company responded, found nothing wrong, false alarm. But the recorder's tape had been running for 7 weeks. It was placed before that alarm. Someone broke in 7 weeks ago, planted the recorder, then deliberately triggered the alarm. They wanted security to come into that building, to that room, where the recorder played. But the previous guard hadn't heard the voice, hadn't checked the room, hadn't found the recorder. So he kept playing, kept broadcasting somehow, kept trying to lure someone to that room. Police couldn't explain the broadcast method. My radio was examined. No bugs, no modifications, secure frequency. No equipment in Building 7 capable of transmitting. But I heard it, and the recorder's phrases matched exactly. Then things got stranger. I stayed on that route another month. The voice never came back. No more clicks, no more instructions. But I started noticing something else. My radio would activate on its own. I'd hear my own voice playing back. Transmissions I made days earlier. Building 7 secure. Dispatch, clearing first floor. Pieces of my communications played back at random times. Dispatch wasn't hearing it. They said my radio was functioning normally, but I'd hear myself, clear as day, speaking words I said days ago. 3 weeks after finding the first recorder, I went back to Building 7 for a routine patrol. I checked Conference Room B, curious. There was something new taped under the table. Another voice recorder, different model, newer, digital. I pulled it free, pressed play, my own voice. Dispatch, I'm entering building 7. Possible intruder. Stand by. Every word I said that first night, every radio transmission, recorded by a device that hadn't been there when I found the first recorder. Someone had been back, planted a new recorder, was collecting my voice. I went back to my vehicle, hands shaking, radioed dispatch, told them what I found. They said they'll send units. While I waited, my radio crackled, but not with my voice this time, the same voice from before, the one that had led me to conference room B. Thank you. 2 words, then silence. When police arrived, we searched conference room B again. The recorder I found was gone. The table was empty. I'd set it on the conference table while radio dispatched. Now it wasn't there. Police thought I was mistaken. Maybe I'd left it in my vehicle, but I knew what I'd seen. I held it, played my voice from it. The lead investigator asked me questions. Had I been sleeping enough? Any stress? Any history of hallucinations? I said no to everything. They filed a report, labelled it as suspicious but inconclusive. I put in my notice the next day. The company offered more money. Different route. I refused. They assigned a new guard to that business park. He lasted 3 weeks before requesting transfer. Said he was hearing voices on his radio. Said they were giving him instructions, telling him to go to building 7, the conference room B, to look under the table. I don't know if he found the recorder. I don't know if he heard his own voice played back. But I know someone is there still. Someone who broadcasts the radios that shouldn't be able to receive. Someone who plants recorders and collects voices. Someone who leads security guards to Pacific rooms for Pacific purposes. I researched the business park history, found an article from 2006. A security guard named Thomas Brannan disappeared while on patrol. His vehicle was found parked outside building 7. His radio was on the seat, still transmitting, but Thomas was gone. They found his body 3 weeks later, in a crawl space above conference room B. He'd been dead for approximately 3 weeks. Cause of death, dehydration and exposure. He'd been alive for days in that crawl space, unable to get out. The investigation concluded he entered that crawl space while investigating a possible intruder and gotten disorientated. The access panel closed behind him somehow. He'd been trapped. But his radio was found in his vehicle. If he was trapped in that crawl space, how did his radio get back to his vehicle? And who was transmitting on his radio after his body was found? Multiple security guards over the years reported hearing Thomas Brannan's voice on the radio, saying things like, "I'm in the ceiling," and "help me," and "don't come up here." I think Thomas is still in building 7, still trying to communicate, still using the only tool he has, the radio. And I think he's collecting something, building something, recording voices of every security guard who comes after him. Maybe he's lonely. Maybe he's trying to prove he existed. Maybe he's trying to warn us. Or maybe he's just trying to lure us to that room, to that crawl space, where he'd been waiting for 17 years for someone to join him.